Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to what I thought that I would talk about this little interesting video overall, and I was gonna release a video like this actually a couple of days ago, and I don't usually end up talking about NBA basketball. Of course, the sports that I usually end up talking about, they usually end up being boxing or MMA, sometimes a little bit of football or tennis, but I do also watch that of NBA basketball. And I thought that I would just kind of put my 2 cents into this conversation and into this debate. Because, of course, for those of you that know anything about NBA basketball, especially if you've been watching it now for the past several years, probably even more, you know that overall that there's been a grand debate about who has been the greater or the better player between that of Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And I believe why the main conversation overall has been that is because LeBron James is pretty much the best all-around player and the greatest player of the 2010s. And basically, whoever the greatest player is of the next generation, they're always going to be in that same conversation. So when LeBron James retires, when it comes down to whenever he does, the next player on the know that may win a multitude of championships, whether it be Giannis Antetokounmpo or maybe Stephen Curry or whoever it may be, there's going to be a certain amount of people that converts them overall into the possible GOAT conversation as well, at least debatably. Because I think all in all that this pretty much has been going on for a very, very long time. There was conversations about this with Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, at one point in time Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. But the big question all in all is who really is truly the greatest basketball player of all time? Or all in all, who really does deserve to be in that same realm or in that same category as a Michael Jordan? And do I believe that LeBron James is in the same category as a Michael Jordan? Do I believe that LeBron James actually deserves to be anointed as debatably the greatest basketball player that I've ever seen? Or I don't want to say that I've ever seen because I only started watching basketball around the LeBron James, Stephen Curry era and maybe the Kobe Bryant era when it comes down to it. But at the end of the day, do I think that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player that, when I just take a look at not only the statistics, but the winning and a certain amount of other things, do I think that he's the greatest of all time? No, I do not. And there's no offense against LeBron James. I think that he's an all-time great player, but I think that the media does hype him up to a degree to where I think sometimes it almost does get a little bit ridiculous. That's not me saying that LeBron James is not an all-time great player. I think that you certainly could debate him within your top 5 NBA players of all time. And I know a lot of people that would say debatably, he's for sure within the top 5 of all time. What are you talking about? I understand overall your point, but where LeBron James is for me, at least in terms of his actual value and all-around game, and in terms of where he actually ranks within, amongst the greats, in my view, the level that he's on is pretty much on that Larry Bird, Magic Johnson level. And I know a lot of people, they'll say, well, how could you say that? Because when we talk about peak value, when we talk about peak v peak and all around skill set, when it came down to it, in my view, you can even debate, at least on the offensive side of the ball, that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were actually more talented and more skilled than that of a LeBron James. And I know a lot of people, they would say, wow, that's crazy. How could you say that? Well, if you want to talk about Magic Johnson, for example, Magic Johnson, all in all, was a better passer. He pretty much was about the same rebounder when it came down to it. And by the way, the passing between Magic Johnson and LeBron James really was not even that close. When it came down to Magic Johnson was clearly the superior passer. It is what it is. But of course, a lot of LeBron James fans in the media, they will not tell you that it is what it is. And if overall you do want to go by statistics, overall, if you want to play that game, which is not always a game that I like to play by because it can depend on the era, it can depend on the position, and then it can depend on the system that you play in. And a lot of people, of course, they take a look at LeBron James' statistics and they say, oh, he averages a triple-double, he does this, he does that, not really realizing that that's pretty much just the way that he decides to play in. And you're going to notice that there's going to be a certain amount of players that, they're going to start averaging more triple-doubles as time goes along, especially within this generation, because this is pretty much the era for that. There's a lot of people I don't know who somewhat play within that ball-dominant system, kind of like a Luka Doncic or a James Harden or a Russell Westbrook or a LeBron James. That's why Russell Westbrook already, I believe he has more all-time triple-doubles than that of a LeBron James. Does that mean that I would put him above LeBron James? Of course not, because you have to win at the end of the day. You overall have to show up in the playoffs when it comes down to it, and you have to win consistently. And I think LeBron James is an all-time great player, but there's been a few seasons to where I thought that he actually more underwhelmed than what he did overwhelmed. That's why, in my opinion, he only has 4 NBA championships. And to be honest with you, I think that he's quite even lucky that he got those. It just is what it is. But LeBron James, unless he wins more championships, in my view, he's never going to be in that conversation as the greatest of all time. I just can't see it. I can't put someone that has only a 40% winning percentage in the NBA Finals, and you've been to 10 of them when it comes down to it. You've had several teams that could have been looked at as, overall the most talented throughout the whole entire NBA, or at least on that level. And if you're alleging that that person is the GOAT, like a LeBron James, or if you're alleging that he's the greatest of all time, he's supposed to win a certain amount of more times than what he has. He's certainly overall supposed to have more than just 4 NBA championships. But if we're just comparing him to that of Michael Jordan, but even a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or maybe even a Bill Russell, like I said, LeBron to me, he's on that same level as Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. He's pretty much overall on the same, peak v peak value. He's pretty much on that same level overall in terms of, talent, in my view, yada, 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 yada. In my view, he's in that pack. Maybe you could argue him over Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. I would say that I would slightly, because he won the 4th championship, I would probably slightly put him over that of a Larry Bird. But Magic Johnson, I probably would put slightly over LeBron James. It just is what it is. I know a lot of people would disagree, but it just is what it is. But when you talk about LeBron James versus Michael Jordan, I don't really even think that it's that much of a debate. Because when you talk about LeBron versus Michael Jordan, what category does LeBron James really beat him in? I mean, sure, he beats him in certain statistics, but like I said, that's only just because of the way that he plays. A lot of LeBron James fans, they'll take a look at it and they'll say, oh, well, he beats him in assists and rebounds and this and that. That's great, but there's a reason why LeBron James, all in all, has those statistics. It's a decently great thing that he's able to do that, yada, yada, yada. But LeBron James has purposely pretty much stat padded those certain stats when it comes on it, because he knows that that's pretty much the only argument that he's going to have overall over that of a Michael Jordan, or over other players. Because he knows he's never going to get to the same level in terms of MVPs or defensive accolades or especially winning championships, because he just can't do it. So LeBron James, what he's going to do is that he's going to try to, I got more assists than this guy. I got more rebounds than this guy. I got more this than that guy. Well, what does that really mean if you can't win consistently as much as some of the other all-time great players like a Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Michael Jordan? It just is what it is. I'm sorry, but to me it means jack shit. It just is what it is. It's kind of like with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he may have certain statistical leads over certain people. He may have overall the greatest passer rating of all time and the greatest touchdown to interception ratio, yada, 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 yada. What does that really mean when you can't win consistently? You know what I mean? I would never put Aaron Rodgers over that of a John Elway ever, when it comes down to it, because he just did not win consistently. Now, of course, we can take a look at it and say, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers has certain statistical advantages over John Elway. Well, yeah, but that's not only because some of the ways that Aaron Rodgers plays, but on top of that, it's also because of the era. It is what it is. But when it comes down to it all in all, like I said, so you really have to take a look at statistics. But a lot of people, they'll take a look at LeBron James and they'll say, oh, because he has the advantage in assists and rebounds and this and that, he clearly has the advantage over Michael Jordan. But like I said, they don't understand that LeBron James plays overall in a more ball-dominant system. When Michael Jordan was winning championships with that of Phil Jackson, and I believe Tex Winter, or whoever the hell his name was, or whatever the hell his name was, I can't remember. But when it comes down to it, Michael Jordan was playing in an offense called the triangle offense. And basically what that means is that it was a more of a shareable offense. That meant that every single person on that team had a specific role. So what that meant is that Michael Jordan was not going to get as many assists or as many rebounds as overall maybe what a LeBron James would, because he understood that overall he had to be the main scorer. He was the shooting guard of that team. And what that meant is that more than likely another person overall was going to lead in assists or rebounds. So that argument, they can try to use it, but in my view, it's not really that strong of an argument, because there's a reason overall why it is, looked at that way. It just is what it is. But anyway, we're going to see what Mr. Isaiah Thomas, who of course was a former all-time great point guard, I believe, for the Detroit Bad Boy Pistons back in the 80s and early 90s when it came down to it, And of course, Isaiah Thomas, we know that he really hates Michael Jordan. It just is what it is. And I know a lot of people that say, well, he doesn't hate Michael Jordan. Why would he hate Michael Jordan? You can tell that Isaiah Thomas, with the energy that he's always had towards Michael Jordan, he's never liked this dude. It just is what it is. And it's shown overall in his arguments. He's basically tried to debate LeBron James over Michael Jordan. Do I think that he actually believes that LeBron James is greater than Michael Jordan? No, but I think that he's tried to convince himself overall to help himself sleep at night. Basically what Isaiah Thomas is, he's almost like an all-time great fighter when it comes down to it, that is never willing to accept that loss. He just always makes excuses with it. Kind of like a Manny Pacquiao overall when he lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr. Oh, my shoulder was injured. Oh, this happened. Oh, this happened. Oh, that happened. Or it's like a fighter all in all that, even though it wasn't a robbery, they always want to say that they got robbed, like a Marvin Hagler over Sugar Ray Leonard. That's what Isaiah Thomas is right now. He did not want Michael Jordan to be as great as what he was, because, the Detroit Bad Boy Pistons, the NBA back then, at the time, I don't believe they wanted them to be the main champions. So then when it came down to when Michael, when the Detroit Pistons were champions, but then eventually Michael Jordan took over, overall the pain hurt that much more worse because they were really hoping that they would hold Michael Jordan off and that maybe overall he really would be this big hype job after all. But then after a while, it was proven very, very clearly that he was on the next level. But it is what it is. Anyways, we're going to see what Mr. Stephen A. Smith and Isaiah Thomas have to say about this. Let's jump into it.
And when I say he's the GOAT, here's what I mean, right? When you talk about he and Kareem in terms of their 20-year dominance over a sport, and then both of them being able to touch every single aspect of the statistical categories and be leaders in that category. You can't be considered the GOAT and you don't lead in no statistical category. When you talk about Kareem and you talk about LeBron James.
And basically what that was a shot at Michael Jordan. So Isaiah Thomas is going to use that same argument that many LeBron James fans use, which is that, oh, well, Michael, he doesn't lead in all-time points and all-time assists and all-time that blah, 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 blah. Well, I believe that Kobe Bryant eventually surpassed Michael Jordan in terms of all-time points. Would I put Kobe Bryant over Michael Jordan? No. Not everyone that just is, better in all-time, stats when it comes down to it is greater than this other player. Drew Brees, I believe, eventually surpassed Brett Favre, although, in terms of all-time passing yards. Would I put Drew Brees above Brett Favre in terms of an all-time great quarterback? No, I wouldn't. Because when it comes down to it, Drew Brees, even though I think he's a very exceptional QB, and I think he's one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time, at least debatably, I think all in all that Brett Favre, prime be prime, I think that Brett Favre was greater than Drew Brees. Although a lot of people, would disagree. But I think there's a reason why Brett Favre had 2 Super Bowl appearances and 3 MVPs at his peak. So, like I said, Isaiah can bring up this bullshit all he wants to. Now, there are certain, sports to where they may have certain statistical arguments, especially more in individual sports, in my view. But that's because, all in all, it can be, that can be looked at in terms of individual greatness. Now, in terms of team games, it still can be looked at as individual greatness if you have a statistical advantage. But a lot of the times that also can be the system that you play in and a certain amount of other things as well. But if we were to talk about a conversation such as Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Muhammad Ali or Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus another fighter, and if we were to take a look at the accuracy of punches and maybe the defensive responsibility and yada, 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 that's something a little bit different. Or if we were to take a look at Novak Djokovic versus Nadal or Federer and, take a look at the statistical advantages that more than likely Novak Djokovic has, not only that, but also, the certain career wins that he has, then that's something maybe we can take a look at. But in a team game especially, it's a little bit more tricky. Because a lot of the times with the statistics that they have, it's usually overall just the way that they play when it comes down to it, or the system or the era. So we do have to be very, very careful.
That is the conversation in terms of, in my opinion, who's the best to ever do it. Because from a winning...
what this almost is to me, like when people try to make up this point, it's almost like when, I give one of these guys that always try to debate Sugar Ray Robinson or Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. And they say, yeah, well, these fighters are great, but, could they get to 89-0? But what they really don't mention is that, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., he's one of the all-time greats, debatably even a top 10 fighter of all time, in my opinion, in terms of boxing history. But what a lot of people also don't realize is that a lot of the fighters that Chavez Sr. fought to get to 89-0, some of those fighters were just bums off the street. It just is what it is. Like, some of those guys would only have like 3 fights in their record, and some of them would be like 1 and 2. So at the end of the day, we have to realize, why things transpire the way that they do. And is LeBron James really, having certain statistical advantages over certain people because he's really that much greater than those players? I don't think so, because if that were the truth, then if you were really that much greater than those players, you would have won more. It just is what it is. Now, I was talking to a friend the other day who's a very big Aaron Rodgers and LeBron James fan, and both of those athletes are very, very similar to the degree to where they have a lot of expectations on their shoulders constantly, and they always get propped up, and they usually fail more often than what they succeed, in my view, when it comes down to it. It just is what it is. And when it comes down to it, my friend said, oh, well, just one finals, series when it comes down to it doesn't, define a whole entire 82 career season or, 82 game season. Well, it's no offense overall, but that's pretty much a loser's mindset. It just is what it is. We can take a look at other certain quarterbacks. Like, we can take a look at, Joe Burrow, for example, who was just in the Super Bowl against that of the LA Rams. And I can sit here and say, oh, well, you know what, Joe Burrow, I'm not going to go too hard on him because, one Super Bowl failure when it comes down to it shouldn't define his whole entire season. But at the end of the day, you had the team, in my view, to possibly pull off the upset. You had a lead overall for the majority of that game, and you blew it. So at the end of the day, what do we have to say? That season was a failure for Joe Burrow. Yes, he was never expected to make the Super Bowl even in the first place. But at the end of the day, when all things, were seen through for how they truly are, you had the team all in all to possibly pull off the upset and pull off the win, and you didn't do it. It's the same thing with LeBron James.
Percentage standpoint, from a statistical standpoint, from an impact on the game standpoint, any criteria of measurement that you want to use, these two are in the top 5 in almost every single category. Now, when you talk about popularity and the most marketable, Jordan out-trumps everybody with the exception of he and LeBron. Because what he and LeBron have done for...
Well, Michael Jordan, not only in terms of popularity, is greater than LeBron James, Isaiah. He's greater in almost every single category. Yes, like I said, LeBron, he's going to have the advantages in certain statistics overall, like that of rebounds and assists and yada, 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 yada. And excuse me, their statistics are going to look somewhat, different because LeBron James, of course, he's a small forward, I believe, and Michael Jordan, he's a shooting guard, and they're completely two different sizes. But at the end of the day, when you talk about them for their rightful positions, who's greater, in my opinion, for the small forward position versus the shooting guard position, I don't even think it's debatable. I think that Michael Jordan is not only the greatest shooting guard of all time, I think that he's the greatest player of all time. And even if you want to just compare him and Michael Jordan, I mean, LeBron and Michael Jordan, Michael beats him in almost everything in terms of accomplishments. He has more MVPs. He has more finals MVPs. He has, overall more finals wins. When it comes down to it, he has more defensive overall accolades. He has more defensive player of the year awards. So, LeBron James fans, they always try to say, oh, well, the only reason why people say that Michael Jordan is greater than LeBron just because, it's a team game and he had the greater teams and blah, blah, blah. That's a bunch of horse shit. And they all say, oh, well, the only reason why he's counted as greater is because he has more championships. No, if you were to make that case with someone, that would be more of a case of Kobe Bryant. Because Kobe Bryant has 5 NBA championships, but he doesn't beat LeBron James in a whole lot of categories. And 3 out of the 5 championships that Kobe Bryant has anyway, the most valuable player on that team usually was Shaquille O'Neal anyway. So, like I said, that's something to where you can make that point. But Michael Jordan, in almost every accomplishment ever, he pretty much beats LeBron James. And, I mean, it's really not even that close.
All game of basketball. And let me be clear when I say this. Michael Jordan, what he did from a marketing and basketball standpoint for all game of basketball is immeasurable. And we never thought that we would ever see anybody do that again. But what LeBron James has done from a marketing and an impact standpoint in terms of financial dollars coming in, he and Jordan stand alone in terms of improving our game and making it possible that we can have these jobs to talk about them. So we thank Jordan and we thank LeBron, but when it comes to the measurement and the criteria, LeBron James and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are in categories by themselves.
No, not when it comes to the GOAT conversation. And like I said, LeBron James, and to be quite honest with you, I don't even know if Isaiah Thomas truly 100% believes that LeBron James is over Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Isaiah Thomas, overall, he has actually always been on record as stating that if you were to take Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird at the end of the day, he actually believes that Larry Bird is the best player overall out of all 3 of those players. And the reason overall why he has that opinion is because, of course, he used to be a part of the Eastern Conference back in the late 80s, mid to late 80s and early 90s. And, of course, he had to face off against that very ruthless Boston Celtics team for a very, very decently long time. Larry Bird was one of the all-time great players as well. And in my view, LeBron, Larry Bird, and Magic, they're pretty much all in that same category. You pretty much put all their names in a hat, excuse me, in my view, when it comes down to it, and whoever you draw out, first is whoever you draw first. In my opinion, Magic Johnson would probably get the first vote. I would probably put LeBron James now as second, but it's close, and then probably Larry now is, very, very close third. But all those players, in my view, they're pretty much on the same level.
We've had this discussion before, Isaiah Thomas, and I got to tell you this. Before I go into my position about this publicly against you, of all people, okay? I will ask you this question. Do you have LeBron over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Not until he passes him in the scoring title, but as an all-around player, yes. And by the time that LeBron James is finished, see, we're measuring LeBron James now, and he's still in his basketball playing career. But we can safely say that.
Right, but why is LeBron James really looked at as an all-around greater player than Kareem? Is he really? Just because he averages more assists? Like, it just is what it is. Give me a break. LeBron James is not greater than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I hate to burst people's bubble. It just is what it is. You're talking about a person that has 2 Finals MVPs, 6 MVPs, 6 NBA championships, and one with 2 different franchises. I'm sorry, no, LeBron James is not greater than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It just is what it is.
By the time he's done playing, he may have passed Kareem. When he passes Kareem in scoring, you have to anoint him as the GOAT.
Okay. Well, I don't, and I won't. Let me get that out the way first. That's number one. You know where I'm going with this.
Okay.
I'll let you speak. It's my turn now.
I agree with you, Stephen A. Now, I would have a friend all in all that, when we talk about Tom Brady, he would say, oh, well, you call Tom Brady the GOAT when it comes down to football, and, he basically, is the all-time leader in passing yards now. Excuse me. And a certain amount of other things. That's true. But let's just say all in all that Tom Brady, in terms of passing yards, let's say that, because now he's retired, let's say that he was not even above that of a Brett Favre. And he was still behind Drew Brees and maybe Peyton Manning and Brett Favre when it came down to it. Would that be me saying, like, well, you know what, Tom Brady, he only has 78,000 passing yards, and not overall, he doesn't have as many passing yards as Brett Favre or this or that, so I can't put him on the same level overall as a Brett Favre. Of course I wouldn't do that, because that's a cumulative stats. It's no offense overall against LeBron James, it's great that he's getting those accumulative stats when it comes down to it, but at the end of the day, that's just overall you doing that over a certain amount of time. Don't get me wrong, it's great that you can do that. But at the end of the day, not only is the era a little bit more different, but when it comes down to it all in all, Michael Jordan, he didn't play as long as LeBron James has. It just is what it is. People always try to bring up these points or whatever and say, well, LeBron James has done this and done that. That's great. But Michael Jordan is already way more accomplished than LeBron James in a significantly lesser amount of time. So it is what it is. That's how you know that Michael Jordan was the greater player.
It's my turn now.
And it's not even in terms of championships. Because, because LeBron James fans, they always love to say that. They always love to say, oh, well, it's, because it's a team game. First of all, LeBron James has had one of the most greatest amount of helps that I've ever seen that any player have. The man has had several different super teams within the past 15 years when it came down to, or at least within the past, 12 years when it came down to it. He's only won 4, and to be honest with you, he's lucky that he even got that. It just is what it is. So don't give me this spiel about how, Michael had the better teams. No, he did not. It just is what it is. Michael had some great teams. Don't get me wrong. That's not me saying that he did not have his, certain amount of help. But don't sit here and tell me all in all that LeBron James has never had some help. The man has worked with many, many Hall of Famers. Chris Bosh, Ray Allen, when it came down to it. Dwayne Wade, who in my view is greater than what Scottie Pippen was by a decent amount when it came down to it. He also worked with Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and there's a multitude of others, ones that I'm not even mentioning. Dwight Howard, as of recent, although he wasn't the same player. Excuse me, Rajon Rondo, however you pronounce his name. Like, give me a break.
Yeah. Here's the deal.
But Michael, once again, he doesn't even just have championships over LeBron James. He has almost everything over him. MVPs, Finals MVPs, Defensive Player of the Year awards. LeBron doesn't even have one of those. It just is what it is. He has more defensive teams, first all NBA defensive teams over him. Like, come on.
Here's the deal.
Can I hide under the table?
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. Okay. The reason I asked you that question, Isaiah Thomas, here's the reason I asked you that question. Because if numbers are not what we're talking about per se, because if numbers were what we're talking about, then there's nothing to discuss. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 19-time All-Star, 6-time champion, 6-time league MVP. The only individual with one unstoppable move in the history of the sport that still hasn't been figured out. Whenever he could come on the court right now and do sky hooks, and he'd still be better than anybody else trying to do a sky hook right now. And the man's damn near 70 years old. The point that I'm trying to make to you is this: when you look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and what he brings to the table, and he's retired as the all-time leading scorer in NBA history, where he still stands, numbers-wise, and you consider his success at UCLA and in a high school Powell Memorial, New York City, all of that other stuff. Just the greatest. If you're looking at it from there, But we do have something called the eye test. We can look at it and we see the all-around capabilities that you pointed out about LeBron James. Can't be dismissed because Jordan didn't concern himself with doing all the things that LeBron does. Here's where my attitude with you.
I agree with you, Stephen A. I agree with you because Michael Jordan, especially when he was playing, for championships, he didn't play in a similar style like LeBron James did. And the way that LeBron James plays, that's a big part of the reason why he only has 4 NBA championships to begin with. So I'm sorry, LeBron James, even for how great of a player he is, he can't be listed above Michael Jordan. And to be honest with you, I don't see him winning ever another championship. I think that his time is done. I think, to be honest with you, he was even very lucky to win that last one. But it is what it is.
Comes into play because the road to prosperity that was traveled, I can't believe you diminish it the way that you do. LeBron ain't had to go against there was no semblance of the bad boys. Even the bad boys part 2 with the New York Knicks, with Mason and Oakley and Ewing and all of these brothers before Charles Smith, God bless him, ruined everything by not being able to make a layup on 4 different tries, okay, in a conference finals against the Bulls. Before all of that happened, the New York Knicks was part 2 of the bad boys. Y'all were the original bad boys. You talked about it. You know what y'all brought to the table and what Jordan had to go through. We know what rules were implemented to try to...
Well, let me state this when it comes down to, because a lot of people, of course, LeBron James fans especially, they always love to say, like, oh, well, people always criticize LeBron James for making the finals, but they don't criticize Michael Jordan for not making it out of the first round. Yeah, right, but we have to take things into context here. When Michael Jordan was not making it out of the first round, he was literally facing almost that era's version of the Golden State Warriors. And I'm talking about the Golden State Warriors not only with Steph, but like Kevin Durant as well. When he overall was getting eliminated in the first round, he literally was pretty much the only all-star on the team possible when it came down to he didn't really have that much help. And all in all, he was facing off against a team, against the Boston Celtics that had like 4 first ballot Hall of Famers. So, of course, a lot of people, they'll bring up that argument, but come on, man. Like, that's like criticizing LeBron James, in my view, overall for losing within his first couple of seasons in the playoffs, or losing in 2007, to the San Antonio Spurs, and saying all in all, oh, it was a complete failure. I don't give, like I said, it all depends on the context. Like for Joe Burrow, for example, I have to criticize him to a great degree because you were supposed to win that game, in my view, if you really are the quarterback that is supposed to be this new cool Joe. When it comes down to it. So at the end of the day, you were supposed to win that game, so I have to criticize you. But if you're a person necessarily like a LeBron in 2007, where not only it's your first year, but, San Antonio, they're much more experienced than you, and at the time they were decently more talented, then okay, I can say, okay, I'll give you a little bit of a break. But if you're a LeBron James that is in 2011, and you clearly have the more talented team against Dirk Nowitzki, you're supposed to win that series. If you're a LeBron James, all in all, in 2014, and you still have, older Ray Allen, but a decent version, he can still do some things. You overall have, I believe, Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, and you're facing off against a little bit of the older San Antonio Spurs. You're supposed to make that series more than just a 5-game series. If you're LeBron James with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love and a decent amount of other role players like J.R. Smith and a certain amount of other players on that team, when it came down to it, that was looked at as a super team. And if you only get a 5-game series with the Golden State Warriors in 2017, I'm sorry, no, you were supposed to do more. That season is what I would classify as a failure. Any season to where your team overall is looked at as one of the top 3 most talented rosters within the whole entire league, and you don't end up winning the championship, that season, in my opinion, should be counted as a failure. It just is what it is. So LeBron James, in my view, in terms of championship, accolades, he's oftentimes failed more overall than what he actually has succeeded.
What the hell y'all were doing, for crying out loud. The game, the bad boys, are responsible for some of the rules changes that took place. And the way the NBA felt it was a priority to sort of change the complexion and make the game prettier, because y'all will go into an arena as the bad boys, proud of it. We gonna shut you down. We gonna do whatever it takes to beat you. You ain't getting on us. We got The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and in the damn docu-series, you got John Sally saying, we had to get him before he took off, because he wasn't human. He wasn't human. We had to get him before he took off. This is the kind of stuff that was said. And so I'm saying to you, we got a guy like Michael Jordan, who's a 6-time champion, unblemished in NBA Finals appearances. We got LeBron, who's lost 6 NBA Finals. Okay, All of them weren't his fault. Most of them weren't his fault. But some of them he was directly responsible for, or at least a couple of them, when you especially against Dallas. So we got to look at that.
Well, my point being is this. If you, excuse me, if you are allegedly the greatest player of all time, and if you have at least two other all-star caliber players on your team, you're supposed to win that series. You're not only overall supposed to make it closer, you're supposed to win that series. So don't give me this bullshit overall about, oh, well, the teams that LeBron James had to face, no one ever would have beat them in history. That's bullshit. It just is what it is. Larry Bird overall, he was able to beat at least Magic Johnson's and, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's LA Lakers team at one point in time, I believe, throughout the 80s. And, I'm not going to say that they were significantly more talented than the Larry Bird team, but they were clearly a little bit more talented each and every time usually. They had James Worthy, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That pretty much would have been kind of like a Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant duo today. And Larry Bird was at least able to pull out one finals wins overall, or one final win overall over a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson overall led LA Lakers team, overall with Pat Riley. So if Larry Bird can do that, LeBron James, if you're allegedly the greatest player of all time, like many people try to allege that you are, you're supposed to win that series in 2017. I'm sorry, it just is what it is.
You got to look at the fact that, again, who are you going up against? What era are we playing in, okay? And I look at it from that perspective, and I'm saying to you, Isaiah, of all people, the face of the bad boys. I mean, how could you sit up there and know that LeBron James never had to go through somebody like y'all to get to where he is?
And I overall give LeBron James credit for the 10 finals appearances, but there's only so much I can give him credit for 10 finals appearances. Because if you've made 10 finals appearances, and the majority of the time you're getting completely blitzkrieged by the West teams, what that really tells me is that the majority of the time your Eastern Conference really was not that overtly competitive. It just is what it is. That's what that tells me. So, it's whatever. But if you're talking about other people, maybe in football, for example, like if we talk about a John Elway, a Brett Favre's, 2 Super Bowl appearances or something like that, that maybe could be construed a little bit differently because, maybe you could argue that certain competition in their divisions or in their conferences were decent when they had to get over them. But LeBron James, I mean, it's no offense, but besides the early on Detroit Pistons in the early 2000s, and all in all, besides the Boston Celtics for maybe a couple years, in the latter 2000s, who really did you have to get through? I mean, what, the DeMar DeRozan-led Toronto Raptors? The Derrick Rose-led Chicago Bulls? Like, who really was going to take you over? It just is what it is.
Still got more finals losses than wins, all right? And sit up there and say, he is the GOAT. I know as an all-around talent. I'm not questioning that. That's why I got him number 2 all time on my Mount Rushmore. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, Zeke, you do know that's an insult to the LeBron James kid, right? I mean, my God, how dare me? In the history of basketball, I only have one player above you in the history of the sport. And the Rich Pauls of the world will act like I'm insulting him, which is ridiculous. The real insult.
And he shouldn't even be ranked that high. To be honest with you, Stephen A. Smith, you overrate him. I don't see how LeBron James is number 2 at all. To be honest with you, he's not even within my top 3 or 4. It is what it is. And I know a lot of people that take a look at me like I'm crazy. Listen, at the end of the day, LeBron James is an all-time great player. But really the only basis for LeBron James being, above those guys is what? He gets more assists and rebounds. That's great, but that's really only because of the way that you play. It just is what it is.
Is the fact that you ranked 24th or 27th. I didn't even look. But I didn't see you in the top 20. I didn't want to think about it. It's an insult. Thanks for watching.
But anyways, that's really overall about it for today. I just thought that would be very particularly interesting, and thank you so much for watching. But I'll talk to you all later, and overall we'll see what happens more with this conversation.